Okay na?
Okay.
May time and all? You see? Okay, brother. Let's get the ball rolling. Although at least meron ka rin naman, we can share just in case. Alright. Hindi naman nakikita itong mga gulo dito masyado. Okay. Okay na tayo, boss? Start. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to Tres Maria, your favorite Super Tres Super Marios. Yan. RRM in the house today. There's a lot we have to discuss. I'm a little bit under the weather. I've been interviewing people since 7 a.m. So if I'm not at my sharpest, pasensya na lang sa mga followers natin. But today, we have a very special guest. Marami tayong pag-usapan. Philippine media, China media, amazing people, great people. And then of course, we have our regular co-host, Mark Gamboa.
Hello.
Otherwise known as Attorney Gamboa, and of course our future ex-senator, Secretary Ronald Llamas. Thank you very much again, gentlemen, for joining us. Today, balikan natin itong kaibigan natin. I actually interviewed him on a separate show, The View from Manila. I suppose people could look forward to that fantastic discussion, but I felt kasama dapat talaga si Sir Ronald at saka Mark, no, para medyo mas bardagulan ng usapan ngayon. So we have with us David Nye. David Nye. It sounds American, but it's actually Pinoy. Thank you very much, David, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's been a pleasure doing your show on One News and doing this podcast.
Yeah, so that one was the more, all are politically correct except Ronald, but that one was the more formalic. This is the more bardagulan edition. So over the next 40-45 minutes, there are a number of things I want to discuss, and I'm really curious also. Of course, I know Ronald gets geeky whenever communist stuff come up. I don't want to tag you. And Mark has really this kind of reasonable sense of, ano ba talagang hinahanap ng masa. David, obviously, we have you here for many reasons, including your fantastic personality, and sense of fashion. But obviously, it's because of your very important role as a very, very key editor at the Global Times in China.
Right.
So, marami tayong pag-usapan about disinformation, China, fake news. But before that, can we first start a little bit of a background there about you? Because I got to know that you also have something in common with another regular guest we have, Ambassador Romualdez. So, how did you start in media, David?
Well, it's been a strange journey for me to get into news, actually, to be a journalist. Actually, in Ateneo, I was an economics major.
Right.
And my thesis advisor, one of my professors, was Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, she's my tita, guys. Show respect. Show respect.
She was very tough in Ateneo. Being an economics major, being under her, I took several subjects under her. It was very tough, but very good. When it comes to economics, very few can really beat her as a professor. And she was my thesis advisor. And you can imagine how things were back in the day with no internet, no cell phones, no computer, nothing. Everything manual, typewriter. Run to the library if you do your stuff.
Yeah.
No
Pornhub.
Her rule, definitely no Pornhub. We used magazines.
Just to be
We
clear,
bought magazines back then.
the views expressed by Ronald Llamas does not reflect the whole show. All right, okay. Please go ahead, sir.
And it was definitely very tough. For example, just give you one example. What she did was, the rule was we had to write our 50-page thesis to graduate. Right? Her rule was, if you use Snowpake, in those days it was Snowpake, okay, to correction fluid or
yeah, yung gaganin mo.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you use it on a page, you better rewrite the whole thing. She doesn't allow it.
So perfection.
So you can
Oh my
imagine
God.
the sleepless nights when you just make one tiny mistake.
OMG.
You have to retype the whole page.
OMG.
So these kids now, these Gen Zs and millennials, don't understand.
Hey, be careful.
What we
I'm
went
a
through
millennial.
back then.
hey, it's not that bad. Come
Back
on.
then it was every day was still 24 hours, and
Yeah.
every day is 24 hours a day. So you can
Yeah.
imagine the
So
thing.
GMA was a much better professor than a president.
Well, yeah.
She was a decent senator, right? She was a good technocrat at the Department. If actually I interviewed her also on one of my shows
Anyway,
in the past.
my parents wanted to dump me because they had connections into Makati after I graduated. Because of economics. They had friends, obviously.
And you have
played-
Chinoy background, right?
Well, my father is pure Chinese from Shanghai.
Right,
you
right.
know. But, honestly, the reason why he put us, my brother and I, to Ateneo, because, okay, his background is Shanghainese. He grew up in China, Shanghai. And the Shanghainese are very different from all other Chinese. In fact, the joke in China is, once you step into Shanghai, it's like you're moving into a different country.
You mean they're posh and all of that? Cosmopolitan?
Sophisticated. They're cosmopolitan. They're
exactly.
highly exposed.
Right.
Highly westernized, very exposed. This is a port city.
Yeah.
So they're highly exposed. They like Western culture.
Very cosmopolitan.
Very
Yeah,
cosmopolitan,
absolutely.
very sophisticated compared
Yeah.
to the rest of China.
Posh,
Yeah,
posh.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they envy, many Chinese envy Shanghai. For example, my father was very good at English. He graduated from LSE, London School of Economics, very high class family, very old family from Shanghai. So he was exposed to the Jesuits at that time, pre-communist era. A lot of Jesuit missionaries were in China at that time. So he was exposed to the Jesuits. So when he fled, he ended up in the Philippines, and then he got married, and we were born. He wanted to put my brother and I in a Jesuit school. First it was suggested to put us into Xavier. But he said, no, I don't want my sons to grow up Chinese, he said. I want my sons to grow up men of the world. So he put us to Ateneo.
Right.
And Ateneo was the number one Jesuit
Hey,
school
you're the Ateneo guy
at
here.
that time.
Yeah.
Meant for others.
It probably still is,
Yeah.
but that's what he wanted. He wanted us not to grow up as Chinese because he knew Xavier, mostly they were Chinese Filipinos, okay?
Also Jesuit.
Also Jesuit, but their orientation in the Jesuits, it's the Jesuits of Xavier, at least in my time, were very different in orientation from the Jesuits from Ateneo. To wit, the Jesuits in Xavier are mostly those missionaries who were kicked out of China. They were European Jesuits. The Jesuits who were running Ateneo were mostly American Jesuits.
Right.
So the
right.
culture, because we
no.
became a colony of the U.S., so here come all these American Jesuits, mostly from the East Coast.
Right.
New York, Boston, Maryland.
That's why your accent.
My accent very different. I'm from China. Very different.
But why did you become Nye? I mean, like I was confused.
All right.
Like, is it an American guy or what was going
People
on?
are wondering.
Yeah.
okay, The original name of our family was NYI, Chinese. Ni.
Okay.
Because my dad and their family was so westernized, when it came
Interesting.
to me, they changed it to the Anglo version, which
Interesting.
was NYE, Nye.
Ah.
So whenever people ask me, where did I get Nye? I said, we're the only non-blonde hair, blue-eyed Nyes in the world.
Yeah.
Because all other Nyes are...
David, there are like two other David Nyes, including an academic, right? Like, yeah.
And they're all blonde hair, blue eyes. This is
Yeah.
an Anglo-Saxon name.
Yeah.
It's an Anglo-Saxon name. You have Joseph Nye, famous Harvard professor.
Yeah.
You have Bill Nye, the science guy. All right. They're all blonde hair, blue. They're all Caucasians. Nye is a Caucasian name.
Yeah.
We're the only non-Caucasian Nyes in the world, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course.
Thanks for bringing balance to
No,
the universe.
and people always ask me if I'm American, by the way.
Yeah.
They always ask me if I'm an American. Even Americans I worked with and British thought I was an American.
Especially because of your accent.
The American, for example, editor at
Ikaw
Global
punta, Chay.
Times,
And very tall. Yeah, you're very tall. Yeah.
and the American editor at Global Times, when I first joined Global Times, thought I was an American. So he asked me, so David, what state are you from? So I started laughing, and why are you laughing? I said, does the state of the Philippines count? No, no S. You're from the Philippines? I know a lot of Philippines. They don't sound like you. Harping.
Hey, they didn't meet Ronald Llamas. Now, let's talk about a little bit about your background in Philippine media. So, why did you go abroad? Because you were quite an established journalist in the Philippines.
First in the Philippines.
Yeah.
The reason how I got, as I said, I was economics graduate.
Right.
And, my parents, I actually defied them in a way, okay?
Rebelde.
It was my classmate from Ateneo who was a mass communications major.
What? Sorry, how do you say it?
Ateneo.
Okay.
Arneo.
We know it as Arneo,
Arneo.
but it's Ateneo. Medyo nag-evolve pala. Go ahead.
I know it sounds very clear.
Yeah, it's like, go ahead. Yeah.
Anyway, my classmate from Ateneo who graduated from the same on the same graduating class, but she was a mass comm major. She ended up an intern of Channel 9.
Right.
So she asked me, she dared me actually. She said, there's an opening in Channel 9. Would you like to apply? Since you were Ateneo's public speaker, debater, stage actor for Shakespeare, I dare you to apply. There's an opening as a news anchor.
Right.
So she dared me. I was only 20 years old that time.
Oh, wow.
So I walked into Channel 9, Broadcast City in Capitol Hill, and I said I wanted to become a news anchor. They're all laughing. So I was, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Young looking, very young,
Yeah.
20 years old.
Totoy medyo.
Absolutely. So nevertheless, they gave me a screen test, a writing test, editing test, all sorts of tests, okay? Then I went home as if, okay, fine. The next day they called me up, and they asked me, would you like to join us as a junior? We can't make an anchor so you're too young.
Right.
But we have an opening for a junior reporter. Would you like that? I said, sure. And the rest is history. I mean, that's how it started.
And back then, kasi sa pagkaintindi ko, back then, speaking straight English was kind of...
Was the norm.
Was the norm,
Was the
right?
norm,
This is my
because
parents' generation, yeah.
All newscasts back then in the Philippines were all in English except for BBC Two.
BBC Two.
Banahaw Broadcasting
Ah,
Corporation, right?
okay. Parang tayo nagko.
You remember Banahaw
This
Broadcasting?
is Bomba Radio, like.
You see the big beautiful country. Remember that
Yes,
jingle?
yes,
Beautiful
yes,
jingle,
yes,
you know?
yes.
The big beautiful country, Beautiful jingle.
So so during the time it was a majority English language media landscape. So
Absolutely.
So what on earth happened? Were you there during the transition?
During my younger days, we used to listen to
You-
David
you-
and
Yeah, and Babe Romualdez.
straight Jinglish.
Jingle. Yeah.
No,
It's not the Kabayan or the Castro
in fact,
English.
during my time, you could even speak to the policeman and sadi-sadis.
Exactly.
All in English. They would speak in halting, but they would like to speak.
Yeah.
To the taxi drivers would force themselves to
Yeah.
speak English.
We're the same in the Cordilleras and Baguio.
I'm sure.
Until now, right? You can speak English to folks in whatever Cordillera province and all of that. So I suppose that was the way in much of the country back
No,
then.
in fact, when I was studying in Ateneo, we used to make fun. The Taglish now that's so common
Yeah.
began actually with Assumption, Sanlo. We used to make fun of them when they say "Why naman." That became
The conyotic.
that became the start.
my people,
of the
my
"Why naman"
people.
thing, and we used to make fun of that all the time.
Yeah.
The Assumptionistas.
The conyotic.
The why naman.
Why naman?
That's how
na.
it started.
Now na.
Including your professor GMA.
Was she like that?
Oh, Jim, I was all English.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But she was all English. She was all English.
Ikaw, Mark, do you remember? I mean, of course, both of us are old millennials. But do you remember those days? It was mostly English. Do you remember how the transition happened? Because I'm from Baguio. It's a different world. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it started with media. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
As
it's
I
not
said-
from the people. It's from the top.
As I said,
Yeah.
I was with ABS. I was a pioneer of ABS-CBN in '86. All right, and we had good programs at the start. With World Today, World Tonight, and everything. And I was an anchor for the World Today, actually, the morning newscast with Karina Sanchez.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah.
That's how we started. And I was Malacanang reporter for ABS Tingsagat, under Cory. And then suddenly they announced we were going to launch TV Patrol. I said, what's this? What's this cross between an elephant and a mouse?
Ayan na, nagsimula na. Warm up na, warm na. Let's go.
I said, what's this
That's it.
monstrosity?
That's it.
Hybrid.
Yeah.
And right away, I protested. I complained to David. What you promised us quality programming, and now you're going to have a tabloid
Yeah.
using Taglish. That doesn't sound very quality to me.
Tapos parang patay, may
And we
patay,
got
patay.
into
Ganun.
this huge
Yeah.
argument, and shortly after, I resigned in protest.
You were that emotional about it, like you were
and
pissed
shortly
off.
after
Yeah.
I resigned, the entire probe team also closed shop.
Oh.
It became a snowball effect. I
Yeah.
resigned, and probe team closed shop.
The Cheche Lazaro people? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
they just stopped everyone one after another. Started protesting and then leaving ABS-CBN. That
Interesting.
Time, you know.
Mga elitista. But,
No, we're not
buti nga umalis
elitist.
kayo.
I'm
just kidding. I'm being sarcastic.
Well, okay. I mean, you call me aristocrat, call me
Mga
whatever you want. The
Inglesero.
fact is, we wanted what is good for the Filipino people.
Yep.
I mean, I've always maintained that America gave us a comparative advantage over other Asian countries back then. Stop harping on the colonization, but the colonization did at least one thing good for the
Yeah.
Philippines.
At least, yeah.
The public school system became good in the Philippines because of the Americans. They set up a very good
UP. UP is an American
school
product.
system,
Yeah, exactly.
Public school system.
Yeah.
Because Americans were into public school, right?
Yeah.
That's very American, okay? And we had English as our medium of instruction. Right now,
Yeah.
other countries are spending huge amounts of money to learn English.
Yeah.
When I was in China, for example, you wouldn't believe how much money they spend just to teach their citizens English. They
Right.
spend huge amount, and we didn't even have to spend anything. It was given to us on a silver platter, and we mucked it.
In exchange
Why?
for ratings.
Huh?
For ratings,
No.
siguro.
I argued against
That's
that.
his point, actually. He doesn't
That's my
believe that.
point.
Yeah.
For the longest time, as we said earlier, most of the channels were broadcasting in English. We have to set the standard, not the people. It's garbage in, garbage out. Okay? We provide the garbage, English, and the people follow. You're telling me that back in the day, people were not watching television? Of course not. They're forced.
That's my point. Yeah.
It's a captive audience.
You have no
it's
choice.
a captive
Yeah.
audience.
So they'll catch up with you if
It's
that's
really
the standard.
what you show them, which
Yeah.
they will follow,
Yeah.
which they will abide by.
David, you're not an anchor. Don't worry about you're talking to us. Not just, you're going back to your anchor days. Like, ladies and gentlemen, this is a travesty. Please go ahead.
That's my being a public.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
Yeah.
But that was my whole point to them, and that's why we were arguing this way, because they were just saying we want to make money. I said we were making money back then.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about? I said,
Yeah.
you're just lowering the standards. I mean, I said, you know why you're doing it? I said, you want to keep people in bondage. You want to dominate people. You want to make people dumb, so that you can
Ayan na.
continue
Ayan.
continue to rule this country. I said, you want just to be up there, and because they have no access to journals of higher learning, because they don't understand English, because you're throwing Taglish at them, you're keeping them down there, and you're keeping them in bondage so you can manipulate them.
Where did this come from, Dave? Can you pinpoint? I mean, we don't have to name drop, but you're more than free to name drop. Like, who had the genius idea of just dropping our whole advantage in English and say it's an aristocratic
I don't know.
colonial language?
I can't
Is it a
put-
UP thing?
I can't
Is it?
put my finger on
Yun
it.
nga eh.
But-
Isn't it also the advent of technology? Because that was the time when
Not really.
when simultaneous
86, nothing yet. Nothing. No,
yes,
nothing
but
going
late
on.
80s, that's the start of simultaneous communication. That's the information revolution, etc. So there's a lot of distractions now. No, it's no longer the monopoly of TV. You have other
No, but I
other
think,
platforms.
Yeah, but I think, Ronald, the problem was once we got democracy back,
Yeah.
everyone just wanted to do his own thing.
Right.
Thinking that by doing your own thing, by saying whatever you want, that's democracy. When I
Right.
kept on arguing, no, what you want is anarchy, not democracy.
Right.
I said there's a huge difference between anarchy and democracy. Just because you want to say and do whatever you want, that's not democracy, that's anarchy, I said.
But maybe, David, that's because
Democracy has a lot of
there was a
rules.
lot of pent-up frustration. I mean,
It doesn't
two
matter.
decades. Yeah.
Other countries have made the transition from authoritarianism to democracy,
Yeah.
and those transitions were seamless. For example, just to give you an example, South Korea
Right.
had a dictatorship a lot longer than the Philippines. A lot longer. Park Chung-hee. Okay? A lot longer than the Philippines. Yet when they transitioned to democracy, it was almost seamless. All right?
Because David,
another example
they
is
had
Taiwan.
competent dictators who built strong middle class.
Park Chung-
Marcos bankrupted the Philippines. We were
I'm
we
not
were a
sure
dirt
about
poor
that,
country by the
because
time.
in
Yeah.
South Korea, I think Park Chung-hee, I'm not sure, was accused of corruption also, right?
Yeah, but their
And-
GDP per capita is very high when they transitioned
Well,
at 1980s.
here's the difference
Yeah.
here. Yeah, the way I see it, here's the difference. Many of these countries who engage in corruption, they skim from the top. But because the top is so high up, nobody notices. Because all the progress is so high up there. When they skim, nothing's there. Even Singapore, if you ask me, they say it's not corrupt. No, I live in Singapore. What they do, what the People's Democratic Party does, PDP, they skim off the top. They institutionalize corruption. They make everything's salary so big and things like that. All right.
They made
Because they control everything.
They made corruption predictable.
That's right.
Efficient corruption, I think, is a technical economics term.
They
Efficient.
institutionalize it.
Yeah, efficient corruption. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
so-
term. Yeah.
But because they do so much, when they skim off the top, nobody even sees it.
Yeah.
Right? So they're all engaged in some form of corruption. China, for example, corruption is endemic. China.
Absolutely.
But because their production is so plentiful, nobody even notices.
Bawi nila. Oh. So now you went out in protest. So you immediately transitioned into international media. So what was the next chapter?
I was working first for the corporate world. I
Mm.
became a corporate communications director for several companies, while at the same time doing part-time anchoring for radio.
Ah, right. So you were a DJ.
I was a news anchor for radio.
News anchor,
I
right.
was a news anchor for radio. Although for a brief period, I was an anchor. I was a DJ for 99.5 RT.
See, DJ. But
Very, very quick. But I was the news manager of the station as well.
Right.
But it was also teleradio, which expanded the present language nowadays, the Taglish language.
I was
because of
briefly,
teleradio.
I was with the original cast of Teleradio
Yeah.
under Ed Finland. He chose me as a part of the original cast because of my interviewing skills. That's why he gave me a segment to do the hard news interviewing. Yeah, I did that for a brief period together with what's his name? He just died recently. He was my friend, the son of Reka Trinidad,
Chino.
and Chino, and
Chino, yeah.
and Gani Oro.
Yeah.
They were the original anchors for Teleradio.
But during our time, there were already call-ins. People who were calling in.
Nothing yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Tul wala bang tulfo nun?
Yes, because most teleradios now. It was also the
It's-
time when
it's
they were
common,
getting.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I see your effort, Ronald. You're trying to also understand the more organic ways by which there was this transition in language and medium. So you go first. How do you end up in China? Is it circuitous? Go Hong Kong, Singapore? How does
No,
it work?
first, what my first foray was very brief actually.
Yeah.
Was when I worked for the original CCTV International. That was in the early 2000s.
Right.
The early 2000s.
Interesting.
You know, I was curious at that time because China was emerging. That was in the early 2000s. All right.
Right.
And I was curious. I looked at the internet. Interesting, China.
CCTV. It sounds like the CCTV surveillance camera, right? Yeah.
And I was
that was
curious.
the height of the
Yeah,
Chinese economy.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
this is early 2000s. Nothing yet. They were still on the.
It's still Jiang Zemin's time.
It's
Yeah.
already double-digit.
Were they? Yeah, they were growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ron's right. They were growing like 10 to 12%.
But
Yeah.
their growth was not like it was later on.
Yeah.
Okay? So and then the headquarters was still in the military museum.
Not the elephant-shaped
The
nice
old
one. Yeah.
This is not the inverted.
The one I
shorts,
went to,
It
yeah.
was not the inverted shorts.
Yeah. That's right. We call it elephant, but yeah.
Inverted shorts, okay?
Yeah.
No, this is the old one in military museum, the classic place of theirs. And I was just curious that time, and I became an anchor. You know, and it was fun.
You were based in Beijing.
Beijing,
You had
that's
to
right.
move na.
Yeah.
So it was the first time for you to work.
No, because I was the first Filipino actually. I just said one day I just emailed them. I want to work for I want. They said sure. You want do an audition here.
First
So I-
Filipino work for Chinese media because we already had Chito and
for
Jaime.
broadcast. Yeah.
For a broadcast, yeah,
For
'cause
state media.
State
right.
media, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, you're the first.
So they
Yeah.
asked me to come over and to do to audition, and right away they said sure. They were so impressed and you're on. How soon can you come back and start with us? Great. I said I thought for me this is an adventure.
Yeah.
I was
And how did your
having fun.
family feel? Your Komintang family feel about it? Going
Yeah,
back
I
to
think they knew that at the back of my mind, I was thinking of something already.
Interesting.
But it was also the time when there's beginning to be a rapprochement.
Yeah, and opening
Yeah,
and
with the
liberalization.
cooling
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
But my family somehow
Yeah.
knew that
Mhm.
I had this ulterior motive. You know, they knew I was always,
A double agent in the
I
making.
I was very mischievous.
Yeah, rebelde talaga.
Yeah, but my family knew that. Okay, I mean.
So you
they
first
don't-
start with
They don't tell
CCTV.
me, but I know they know it.
So you first start with CCTV. This is the pre.
But I didn't stay long there. I
Yeah.
didn't stay long because I was pirated right away by TVB in Hong Kong.
So you moved
TVB
down
Pearl,
to Hong
TVB
Kong.
Pearl, yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, and then after TVB Pearl, I was pirated again by Channel News Asia in Singapore.
So you first went Beijing, then Hong Kong, then Singapore,
Right.
CNA, and then after CNA you went back again to China.
No. I came back to I came back to the Philippines first again.
Okay. So when is this? Late 2000s? Arroyo time?
It's about I guess it is late 2000s.
So your professor was the president by this time,
Then I
right?
yeah
exactly.
2008. Then I got hit by Ondoy and I almost lost all my stuff there.
Oh, shoot,
Then
yeah.
then I became a professor, part-time professor at several universities.
Oh, so you did your end.
I was teaching broadcast journalism,
Right.
public relations, crisis PR, and I was one of the first to start a media literacy course in the Philippines.
Interesting.
Media and news literacy.
Right.
It is not in vogue yet, but I started it already.
But who are the students?
Lyceum, FEU. Yeah.
And how did you end up back in China again?
Because this channel called Blue Ocean Network,
Mm-hmm.
it was a liberal, so-called privately owned TV channel. network.
Shanghai-ish? Shanghai-ish?
No, it was based in Beijing, but I heard it was based on the money of Jiang Zemin.
So Shanghai
So
click.
these
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
more liberals, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
The more
liberals.
Deng Xiaoping type.
That's right. They're more liberal, right? So, and then my friends, foreign friends, whom I knew for a while, were all working there, and they said, "David, why don't you, come over and let's, be back together again and let's have fun. It's a good channel." They said, so I joined. I mean, I was accepted right away again. So I did a show, but after a while, you could feel that there was a clampdown already.
So Xi Jinping time na to.
Yeah, this is already. You can feel it already.
Like how? Can you give us some idea?
Well,
editorial
we couldn't
lines
just-
are changed.
We couldn't just say, right away, "Oh, David, can you see your script?" Right away. Very tight again. At that time, there was this Chinese staff who was working with us, and she ended up moving to Global Times from BON. So a year after, she said, or less than a year actually, she asked me, "David, we have an opening here at Global Times for a news editor, and I recommended you. You're very good, and we work together at BON. I like." And I told them about you, so I applied to Global Times. I said, "Okay, sure, you're in."
Just to remind our audience, what is the Global Times and what does the building look like? Just give us a feel of the place.
Global Times is the tabloid nationalist newspaper of the People's Daily.
So Fox is on steroids. Pravda, like some like
The joke is it's basically Fox on steroids.
Yes.
or Pravda, no.
It's practically the news outlet of the Communist Party of China.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And all of them, by
Yeah.
the way, are all propaganda. They call it newspapers, even
Yes.
CGTN, they call it the news TV. No. It's all propaganda.
Right.
All right?
You mean
So
state interest being reflected as news,
it's
essentially?
all propaganda
Yeah.
because as a news editor, I'll tell you the truth. If I would edit the first draft, when the second draft comes to me, the facts are all different. Much of it is.
There's a
How
new
did this
fact.
happen?
It's like,
How
the
did this
facts
happen,
changed.
you know?
Like, medyo iba yung tawag natin dyan. Hindi na
It's
papag...
magic. It is magical.
Magic, yeah. Medyo literary pala, magical realism palang ano.
And that would happen every day.
OMG.
Every day,
OMG.
What were the big issues na
Exactly.
nakaharap nyo nung
And you
Well,
left.
of course, the U.S. Of course, U.S. is attacking the U.S., attacking the NATO. The usual thing. If America does something that China doesn't like, they'll hit America again.
What were the big things during this
The
time?
thing about China is they will cherry pick certain events in history where America fumbled, and
Yeah.
you would harp on it.
Afghanistan, Iraq.
Or Japan always
Oh, yeah.
Nanjing massacre. Always,
Yeah.
It's always Nanjing massacre. Look at that. It's always Nanjing massacre. And it's really coming out of my ears already. You know, why do you guys keep on harping on that? Life has moved on since the Nanjing massacre. You know,
But
so-
during that time, they were also critical of Russia.
Well, you see, China and Russia have this.
Love-hate relationship.
That's right.
Dynamic. Yeah.
Because
Parang kami ni Ronald. Medyo dynamics. Medyo patama, tapos kaibigan, tapos patama.
speaking of this, you know, they got a history of, you know, a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
That's China and Russia, okay? But China, as I've said, you know, many times, and what I've learned by staying there and by dealing with the communist cadres on a daily basis, is that China primarily is it. I mean, at least the Communist Party is just two things. What they value the most. One is material wealth.
Hmm.
Second is, or equally, is saving face. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
That's it. That's China.
Material wealth for the
For the country, for them,
For
you know,
them.
because
Economic growth, essentially,
for
yeah.
them, that's the pact, the unwritten rule agreement between the people and the Communist Party. You allow us to control your lives, but in return, we will make you prosperous.
That's the social contract.
That's it.
you give up some of your
Your
many
rights
of your
and everything.
Yeah.
freedoms and
Right.
rights.
But hey, we're gonna make you rich.
We're okay with that, right? Because here, we vote for them and then they get everything away from us, right? Unless in China, nahihiya yung government. Di naman kami binoto, ayusin namin. Di ba? I mean, that's the critic, right? You'd rather have a functional
Pero kung
autocracy.
walang pagtagulan,
Ayun lang.
survive.
The problem,
Unless
is
it's
in
told,
China,
yeah.
they will cynicize everything.
Yeah.
Like with the Catholic Church, they will actually change portions of the Bible
Oh,
to suit them, the Chinese way.
yeah.
You
Like
know?
socialism with Chinese characters.
That's
Yeah.
their characteristics.
Which is a
With
Jiang Zemin.
With them, it's always
Yeah.
with Chinese characteristics. What is that? What?
Yeah.
This Chinese characteristics nonsense. I said, you know, it's basically control. Again, it's mind control. You know, yeah.
But face is also very important. When I was doing backdoor after
Right.
Scarborough in 2012,
Right.
I was asking them, what happened? No, we've been doing this for decades. We've been boarding each other's ships.
Right.
No? But what happened now? You can no longer do that now, according to Wang
Right.
Yi, whom I met
Right.
in 2012.
Wang Yi.
He said, I said, why? We're now a superpower.
Yeah.
You
Ah.
cannot do that to a superpower.
It's all
Right.
face. It's all
All
face
face,
for them.
yeah.
It's all face
Yeah.
for them. I tell you.
But also hubris, right? Like, we are the Middle Kingdom, we're a rising superpower.
Greece is a little different.
But
from,
that's why I said
yeah.
China actually is, because of their educational system of rote memory,
Right.
they create templates of information. That if
Right.
you choose this template, you have to all follow this
Follow
template.
that, yeah.
So what they do, they regurgitate all their templates of information over time, but only adjust it for the times. Just like in the 14th century, the tributary system,
Yes.
they're doing it now.
Yes.
They were powerful then, they were
Right.
powerful now. All right, let's redo it, regurgitate it for the modern times.
in a more softer way, Belt and Road.
Yeah.
But it's basically
The same thing.
yeah.
But with the South China Sea, they're doing the same thing, tributary. They want to get tribute from the Philippines. All right? Because they consider us weaker.
And that's what I wanted to ask. During your time there, how did they?
They
view
were
the
always
Philippines?
on praise of Duterte. They were high praise for Duterte because he's so friendly to China. I said, how friendly? How much money is he making off you guys? You know, he thought you could fool me, but I was playing dumb. You see, when
What's
I
the
was there, I was
difference,
playing dumb.
during Pinoy's time and Duterte's time.
They hated Noy Noy.
Yeah.
You criticize Pinoy. You came to us, the Asian Center, gave
I
this
know,
lecture about
I know,
Noy Noy's foreign
it's called-
policy,
it's
bashing
called-
these guys.
it's called,
How dare you?
Have you ever heard of the Trojan horse?
Yeah.
I would get information.
Is that a Chinese version of Trojan horse story or something?
No, I was the classic version.
Yeah.
I passed through the front door.
Exact.
Okay?
Yeah. Ito backdoor eh. Mahilig sa backdoor. At least ito front door eh. We keep it traditional.
So
Yeah.
how would you write about how would they write about Pinoy kunyari pag merong mga
It was negative. It
Yeah.
was negative.
It's Amboy.
They call it American boy and everything. He was
But,
following Americans. The usual
Actually,
line.
during the first year of Pinoy, he was the only Philippine president whose first state visit was China,
Right.
not the U.S.
That's right.
And then during the Nobel Peace Prize award,
Liu Xiaobo, yeah.
Yeah,
He boycotted it.
we boycotted
That's
it
right.
in deference to China.
That's right.
And then when we arrested some Taiwanese triads, we sent them
To China, yeah, not to Taiwan, yeah.
Was very angry.
Yeah, exactly,
So
yeah.
during the first year,
It was okay.
It was okay, no? He went to his hometown in China.
Xiamen.
Yeah.
Xiamen, his mother,
no? Yeah, etc., etc. And at the
The
time,
Coancos, yeah.
for six months, he wasn't talking to the American ambassador.
That's right.
During the first
Grabe,
year.
no?
So, but when Scarborough happened,
Then he changed his tune.
Nona.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nagkaalaman na.
Since I'm the only leftist in the cabinet, I was sent to China to talk with my fellow leftists.
You can do dialectics. Let's do dialectics there, yeah.
And that's where I learned that
No, actually,
face
yeah,
is very dominant.
right. In my case, for example, I don't consider myself a rightist or a leftist.
Yeah.
Okay? I consider myself
You're
based on.
Jesuit.
Well, I'm my Jesuit. You know,
Neither left nor right.
It's really critical thinking. You know, critical
Yeah.
thinking. That's how
Absolutely.
I approach. I was a debater, so I understand. You know, okay, let's look at the facts. Let's look at the
Right.
information, and let's analyze it based on that. Okay.
How important was your role? You were editor of Front Page and Op-Ed,
And
right?
Op-Ed page,
oh,
right.
Essentially the two most important
That's why I told you how much I know about how they think.
Oh my
because
God, yeah.
They put me in the most critical pages where they would save face, right? These are the front pages. These were the frontal pages, which would send out their message, right? So I understood how they were.
You should have stayed. I want to submit op-eds there. I mean,
No.
I've written for China Daily and CGTN.
I've
but
seen enough. More than enough. Okay?
How many years were you in
10 years.
10 years in Global Times?
Right.
Oh my.
And people ask me, how did I survive?
10 years.
Remember. Okay,
Oh my God.
All the other foreign editors all spoke Chinese. I don't speak Chinese. So they wonder, how could I survive and thrive?
But they knew you have a Chinese background. Did you eventually tell them about?
They knew I told them my dad is from Shanghai.
Yeah. Oh, so.
And right away, they were like taken aback when I said my dad is from Shanghainese. Like, shit, I mean, this guy is, wait a minute, you
That
know?
kind.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
That
you know.
But you
They're taken aback
understand.
when you say Shanghainese, it's like, boom.
Yeah.
But you understand Mandarin.
No, I don't.
Oh, really? Yeah.
No, I
And you didn't bother. You didn't bother all
I
those
didn't
years
bother because
because your
they're
dad
taking
want.
language.
Yeah.
They all spoke English. Why
Yeah.
didn't they learn Chinese?
Interesting. So you got away with it.
But I got, that's right. So you begin to wonder, how did I
Interesting.
do it?
Interesting. Yeah. You're like the triple agent. Like, it's like, how did you, without the Mandarin language and facility, you were
Exactly.
able to make it that high?
Exactly.
Oh, maybe because they said, oh, he doesn't understand our conversation.
That's
Because
not true.
some of our friends in China, who were based there, they could understand.
Yeah, that's what
No, what I
Ambassador
would-
Chito
what-
Santa Romana used to
What
tell
I
me.
would think was a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I would do was I could understand a smattering of words.
Right. Put them together,
And
yeah.
when they would, it's rude, obviously, to speak a different language in front of somebody that doesn't understand language, but I would pick up on one or two words, and I knew right away what they were
Yeah.
getting at. You see?
Yeah. Code terms
They
then,
didn't
yeah.
know that I knew a few words, code words.
Yeah.
You know? So that's how we would get around. You see?
Yeah.
And I could tell body language.
Yes.
The way they would move.
Right.
Okay.
Yung
know.
algorithm nila and all.
That's
yeah.
right. So I would analyze everything they would do, their body language, like for example, when I talked about my Catholic faith, if you look at them, it's like they had an epileptic attack. Really. I mean, because they're atheists, and it's almost like they get hit by their conscience when you talk about your Catholic faith.
Interesting.
So suddenly they have what I call an epileptic attack. They would look very nervous, very fidgety, and then they would change the topic right away.
Oh.
You talk about Catholics, it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Their
I think they're the
conscience is hit.
same also when you raise religions like Islam or Judaism.
But
like they
more
also
with
become
Catholics. You know why?
Re-
Because
the Pope and
Christianity, because the Christian faith is the largest organized
faith in China.
and there are more Catholics than Chinese. So they feel threatened all the time by
Interesting.
Catholics
Yeah.
because we're organized.
Because Confucianism and communism
organized.
are not diametrically opposed.
Right.
Mm.
Confucianism doesn't focus on the
No.
Afterlife.
afterlife.
The metaphysics,
They
yeah.
focus on
Here.
ancestors.
Right,
family,
right,
yeah.
right, yeah. Immanent
So it's
spirituality,
not-
Weber,
it's
yeah.
not
That's
that
why-
antagonistic to
That's why I use the
Marxism.
derogatory
Unlike Catholicism.
Yes.
I use the derogatory term when I refer sometimes to them. I call them In the vernacular, I call them taong lupa. Why? Because they're always all about the here and now.
Yeah, the immanent.
They're so materialistic. It's like this is the alpha and omega of the Chinese. This world. That's it.
It's very different, right? It's a very different world.
And a lot of Chinese are merchants. Even during the height of
mercantilists, that's
the
right, they're mercantilists.
even during the height of the Cultural Revolution,
Right.
there were hundreds
all
of
about
thousands
making
of
money.
capitalists.
Yeah, my understanding is Sangli comes from the Chinese transliteration of the Chinese term for merchant. So when they said, in Chinese they said, our job is merchant, the stupid Spanish or not, they thought that's name for China. They didn't know, they were just saying we're merchants.
That's why when the Great Leap Forward failed and the shift of
Yeah.
the
Right.
economy happened,
It's
it was
natural.
not that hard.
Yeah.
It
Because
wasn't.
there were underneath.
Intrinsically,
Yeah.
they were used to it.
They're entrepreneurial people. Yeah. Ikaw, businessman ka, alam mo, di ba?
Ito gusto ko lang din itanong. So you were talking sa Global Times, it's all about propaganda and
It's all propaganda.
pero how are they using it to influence what's happening here in the Philippines?
Because you must understand, okay, Global Times had the Chinese version and the English version.
Ah, right.
What they would do many times is they would translate into English the Chinese version, which was even more radical, more nationalistic. They would translate it to English.
Wait, so the crazy ones we see are already the subdued version?
That's
Is it-
right. Chinese
That's like
version-
there's crazy one then
The
crazy.
Chinese version is to convince their local population, you know, how great they are and things like that. We're great, we're
Yeah.
bold,
Right.
da.
So it's like steroids on fentanyl.
Because the Chinese version is called Huang Chu.
Right.
Huang Chu Shibao.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Huang Chu
the-
Shibao, yeah.
That's the name of the newspaper, Chinese version. Okay, us it becomes Global Times. Okay,
Right.
yeah. So that's how it is.
And how did you have a non-disclosure agreement before you went out? I mean, you know too much.
I don't care.
Like, did you sign an NDA? How did you transition back to the Philippines? I mean, you were 10 years in the inner sanctum of Chinese
I
propaganda.
just told them that I was being called to serve now in the Philippines, and good night, goodbye.
It's like you.
But they wanted me to stay. They offered me a higher salary.
Yeah.
Again. No dice. Bye bye.
Right. Maybe that salary went to some other people here.
That's good.
I think you have a favorite columnist.
fine.
You want to talk about it?
Another student of Gloria.
Yeah, like suddenly, like, oh, we'll have someone else being paid. So when you came back to the Philippines, were you surprised by the change in approach of the Marcos administration, or you warned already the Chinese?
I
This
warned
guy
them
is not.
already. I warned before
Yeah.
I left. I warned them.
What year did you come back?
22.
So sakto, BBM.
After BBM 1 na o before?
Yes, after BBM 1. Yeah.
New admin na, yeah.
Yeah. I warned them already. I told them, they asked me, how is Bongbong Marcos? I said, he's not going to be a Duterte.
Yeah.
Just to give you a heads up, okay? So be prepared, I said, you know. You're not going to have this honeymoon period anymore, I said, you know. I told them straightforward.
Because they thought that Sara and Duterte will control. Because
Right.
BBM is supposed to be a stupid guy,
Right,
just
right.
the front guy.
That,
Yeah.
that BBM would continue yung the
They
same
had
way.
hope. Because of the
hope.
father, because of Ferdinand Sr.
And
Who
every-
normalized bilateral
right.
relations.
And every year, Bongbong is in China.
Yeah. And Amy Marcos.
No,
Amy
the
Marcos.
family is there,
Right.
no?
Great relations,
year.
wonderful relations.
But I told them already
yeah.
straight up, don't expect the same treatment as Duterte. I said,
Pero
I
yung
told
ganyang
them.
klaseng pag-pivot, sobrang layo sobrang on the other side.
But I already knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I mean, obviously I've been a journalist for decades. I know more or less how things are run. You know.
So, Global Times, but obviously there are also accusations that aside from this formal official Chinese propaganda and nonsense coming out on the West Philippines and gaslighting us and all of that, that China is engaged in disinformation activities in the Philippines. So back in 2020,
They
Meta
are, guys, they
tagged,
are.
yeah.
You must understand that the media outlets in China, Xinhua, CGTN,
Right.
ad infinitum, are now covert instruments of propaganda here and around the world. What do they do? For example, you see a lot of these paid articles in Philippine newspapers. The
Right.
ambassador is speaking, and then they put they pay
Yeah.
for that space.
Yeah.
And then they talk about Belt and Road, they pay again for a space. It's an advertorial, is what technically it's known as. They make it look like news, but actually it's propaganda, right? And they're
Right.
doing that a lot.
So advertisement is editorial essential
That's
propaganda.
right. They
Yeah.
make it look like a news article, but actually it's propaganda. And they're buying a lot of space in Philippine newspapers. And they're also buying airtime in broadcast outfits.
And
A
buying
lot of
also
people.
buying people.
No, because all the Chinese now, I told you already,
Yeah.
is all about, they think everyone can be
Be
bought.
bought.
Everyone has
Yeah.
a price. Chinese idea is money is king. That's it.
Mm.
All right? As I said earlier, only it's about material wealth and saving face. That's it.
That's
And-
how they
and-
were
and
And they're
able-
very predictable.
And they
they
have
were able to make Africa the
Right.
second Chinese continent.
yeah, as
Now
Howard
they're-
French, my
now
friend
they're
put it.
problems
Of
because
course.
the BRI, because the Belt and Road is turning out to be a flop.
Yes. No more money.
See, that's the problem with China. That's the problem with them.
No more
I'm telling
money,
you.
no more king.
The problem with them is they always do things knee jerk. They have this knee jerk attitude. You know, they have this foot in mouth. I call it the foot in mouth disease syndrome. They will say something, they will do something out of desperation, not realizing they will trip all over it.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect example is the one-child policy. They overdid it. Now they're having serious problems. Now they have a whole generation of spoiled brats. How are they going to deal with that?
No, may mga issues
Right?
na
Yeah.
Yes, Mark.
may mga issues na lumalabas dito sa Philippines na China is even going as far as destabilization and
Deep fakes.
oh
Here is the golden rule. When China becomes more aggressive internationally, you know they have serious domestic problems. Why? That's to save face. That's to divert attention
Of their own
of
population.
their own everything they do is for domestic consumption. Understand that. It's not for international consumption. It's for domestic because they want to legitimize their rule over China.
So we rather have a stable China then, because the more unstable China is, the more they have to do rallying around the
Yes,
flag and do something
but
crazy
you must
abroad.
understand that stability doesn't mean that we give things up. You see, there are
Yes.
key words and phrases
Good
China
point.
always uses.
Right.
You know,
Win-win.
to make them sound, palatable.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Right.
Cooperation.
Right.
There's a misunderstanding. I know all these terms.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what they mean. Trust me. It's coming out
Which
by
means
Twitter.
what? Like,
All right.
what's mine is mine, what's yours we share?
Cooperation. Win-win means they win with a capital W and we win
With
with a
small.
W. That's right.
Yeah.
They probably get 80-20, 75-25.
If you're lucky. If you're lucky,
And
right?
then the 25 goes to a select few.
Hey, exactly. I want to say the 25, 50 of that goes to our friends.
Who we trust,
Yeah.
who we trust already.
Yeah.
The Chinese are like this. They don't really have friends. What they have are a transactional buddies.
Right.
Once
Mercenaries.
You're not useful to them transactionally,
Yeah.
then they throw you away. Right? They dump you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But David is very correct when he said that the biggest vulnerability of the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government, is the consent of their own population.
That's right.
Especially the 400 to 500 million middle class.
That's right.
Yeah.
If they lose that, then it will make
And the hundreds of
China
millions of
revolt.
It will
and
make
hundreds
China
of
look
millions
like
of
a country.
underclass.
It will
Yeah,
make
yeah.
Chinamen look like a camping.
Yeah, yeah. And the hundreds
This-
of millions of
this-
underclass in those cities who don't have the
Right.
residency rights and
But
all of that. Yeah.
even those, they are not afraid of them. They're
Yeah.
afraid of the
Middle
stable
class.
middle class.
Yeah.
That's right.
The
Why
proletariat,
do-
it has a lot of strikes, but it's for
Right.
them it's still
Why do you
It's not
think they
organized.
stopped reporting figures on the
Youth
urban
unemployment.
youth unemployment?
Yeah.
They stopped. After 21% unemployment, they stopped. They said, no more. We're not. They're scared, okay?
Yeah.
They're frightened.
So, David, we're going towards the latter part, and I want to bring in also Mark. What is your advice to the Philippines and policymakers? How should we deal with China? Because we keep on hearing diplomacy, diplomacy. Yeah, of course, water is wet, but diplomacy in what terms?
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
like David, after the Scarborough incident, I organized a seminar for the cabinet.
Right.
Because the cabinet doesn't, at the time, I think even now, doesn't know anything about China.
They don't,
They
they
don't
don't.
understand the Communist Party of China.
And
They
the
don't
biggest
un-
mistake, for example, is thinking that if you go diplomatically, you would de-escalate the situation. No. When you deal with China, you have to make sure that you want them to lose face. Because when they lose face, they back off. All right? And then they will be forced to make a concession to you. Perfect example is what Widodo did to China years ago. He got pissed off when all these illegal Chinese fishing vessels were plying Indonesian waters.
He blew them up.
Yeah, he rounded all of them, and on live Indonesian TV blew them all up.
Yeah.
China lost a lot of face. What did they do? They had to make a concession to save face. And what was that? They built Indonesia's first high-speed
train.
railway from Bandung to Jakarta.
Sana all.
Yeah.
Fast
No, you hold your ground, they'll give you
Forced
grudging
China to
respect.
make a concession. That's what you
Yeah.
negotiate from a position of strength.
Right.
So you think
Then you de-escalate. Look, has China bothered Indonesia? No. Indonesia again got mad at China for dumping cheap goods. All right, recently. What
Yeah.
did Indonesia do?
Impose
200%
tariffs.
tariff.
Yeah.
You're our number one trading partner, but guess what? What you're doing is wrong. 200%
Yeah.
tariff. Good night.
And then Alice Go goes there, and then they catch Alice Go.
right.
Our Chinese friends here were doing
And
some
we
stuff.
should,
Yeah.
We should learn from this Alice Guo.
Yeah.
Now we can use Alice Guo as a bargaining chip with China. Because what we want to do, I'll tell you what we want to do. We want to make her sing. To expose
You think
China.
she's spy? She could be a spy, double agent.
spy is
I-
As a double agent?
I
I'm just kidding.
I
Like,
strongly suspect she is.
Oh,
The way she was-
interesting.
the way she was talking, the way she was doing things
interesting.
is what I saw when I was living there.
Interesting.
in what way?
Her lifestyle. The way she would lie
Ah.
all the time. The Chinese, they lie all the time. The Chinese, all right, I've broken it down to this. Lie, cheat, steal, coerce, manipulate. China. Period.
But just to be fair to her, it's because of the system. It's a cynical, totalitarian system. People have to survive.
but-
I hear that in Russia too
But-
from
but-
our friends.
But by living there and dealing with them, you're able to draw certain conclusions. Because you see it happening all the time. Common. I told you already, the system is rote memory, so they act in a certain,
Yeah.
uniform fashion.
Survive.
Predictable.
She's no amateur. She's a professional
That's
liar.
right. That's right. That's right.
So you think she's trained?
They're all trained. But their flaw is they act in a certain pattern. So
Yung template lumalabas.
I always
oh.
see, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. That's my conclusion. Just like when I was working with Global Times.
Yeah.
I was news editor, right? When you see one article by one writer, he makes a mistake, they make the common mistake all the way down. All the writers, they make the same mistake. One grammatical mistake, the common grammatical, all the
Yeah.
writers, same. Different story, but the same grammatical
Cascades.
mistake.
Yeah.
It's like a domino effect, you know? Why are you guys so common, you know?
So what do you think we should do with that? First of all, you think the Pogos were really a real national security threat?
No. This is, again, China's way of controlling. No, this is all smokescreen. Come on, man. You actually believe China's, oh yeah, you should get rid of... Run that by me one more time, you know?
No, I believe them. They really mean. No, honestly, I believe China more than Duterte. When the Chinese say Duterte promised us this and Duterte denies, I rather believe China than
but
Duterte.
It's not true that China's...
Mas believe ako sa China.
China actually believes that we should have gotten rid of them. No, I
Yeah.
think that was their ploy. They wanted to control our economy. They wanted their spies to be in place in the Philippines. It's as simple as that.
That's what
It's a
I want to
smokescreen.
ask then.
It's a smokescreen.
Yung mga spies nung China, do you think sana sila nag-penetrate dito sa society natin?
I'll tell you right now, they've driven a deep wedge in Philippine society, especially in high places. And I'm not just talking about government. I'm talking about the private sector.
In what way?
Well, those people who control the economy, they've driven a wedge. They create all sorts of organizations, groups, pretending it's for friendship. Really, at the end of the day, these groups give a voice to China. The latest was the so-called Manila Forum. Guess who spoke? The Chinese ambassador, who proposed this crazy thing called the Greater Manila, whatever.
Bay, Greater Manila Bay, parang the one in
to copy
Guangdong.
there.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Echoed by some Filipino businessmen.
Yeah.
They want to control our economy.
Yeah. But I think
Period.
Pogo is,
So
is
they
more
want to-
it's more two-edged. It's not that simple. In one way, Pogos partly take revenues away from the mainland.
Right.
But in another way, it also, as you said, undermines our economy. And the Triads has a strange partnership with the
I know.
Communist Party.
Yeah.
do
Para
have one.
Sicario
Yeah.
style, di ba? Sicario,
Because
yeah.
Triads can be used to launder money of corrupt Chinese officials.
Right.
Yeah.
Triads
And
can be
infiltrate,
used
to infiltrate, yeah.
sleepers, etc.
Yeah.
It's two-edged. In one
Absolutely.
way,
They're like
also-
pirates,
Yeah,
right?
in one way, China cannot publicly support them because it takes revenues away
Yeah, but
from
here's
China.
what I say about Filipinos. You know, you don't realize that China is manipulating you guys. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, don't be so selfish or you just make money, even China, never mind, you know. Eventually this will catch up on the Philippines. You're all thinking the same thing, wanting to get rich through China. Eventually you'll be taken over. Eventually the country will be taken over. I always warn the Philippines. One day with your attitude, you're going to wake up and guess what? China will effectively be controlling our territorial waters. That we will be begging them to sell us marine products in our very own territorial waters which they control now.
Lulutuin tayo sa sarili natin,
They're
mantika.
already
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, but
Our galunggong.
Tilapia. Ay, galunggong. Yeah,
do
yeah.
it
They sell to us our
to an
own.
extent where
Yeah.
we can't, we're suffocating already.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, as I said, you have to stand up to China. Example, when you see a Chinese boat approaching our, you know, fire at them.
South Koreans see that. South Koreans.
Fire at them. You notice what China's been doing to us? They're not using
Armed,
armed
yeah,
conflict.
yeah, kinetic.
They're
Yeah.
not using guns.
Yeah.
They're using water cannons. They're bumping us. Laser light. They're not using articles of war. They're not using weapons. Why? They're scared of a military conflict. Because in a military conflict, they're scared of losing face. All right?
Like what happened to them with Vietnam in 1979.
And with India also, the border conflict,
Yeah.
okay?
Because the Indians fought back, yeah.
And China, if they they don't want to lose face one-on-one. If you stand up to them, they will back off. Then they will come back to you with a mob. Look what they're doing now. They're crowding with
Militia, yeah.
You see, that's how they do things. Okay, but as I said, they will stop if they see consistently that when they try to, you know, advance, shoot them. They will back off. I guarantee you. You know why they won't fire back? Because they know the world will accuse them of bullying them. They know that Philippine allies will come to Philippine aid. This is a warning to the Philippines. If we want aid from our allies like the U.S. and Japan, we have to first show bravery.
Like Ukraine
We have
showed,
to
yeah,
do the dirty
Russia,
work
yeah.
just like Ukraine.
Yeah.
Ukraine showed bravery. Here comes all their aid. See, from the West, from NATO. The U.S. is giving us token because, hey,
Ay,
what are you
kaso-
guys doing? You're not fighting, man.
Kasi Ukraine naman is yung country naman nila is
It's the same. It's the same thing. This is our territory. This is the same thing. China's also invading our territory. Our waters are our territory. All right.
Kaya pala, ano to eh,
The US
nasa-censor
is
sa kabilang channel to mga... Dito niya, go ahead!
That's
Go ahead! Great stuff!
I
Great stuff!
almost said that's a Trojan horse.
Yes! Like, I think he's provoking us to give China. He's a triple agent. He wants the Philippines to give China. I saw what you did there. I saw it. Go ahead.
No, but the U.S. is just waiting for the Philippines
Delegado tayo
to
dito.
show bravery.
Ronald, you saw what I saw.
The U.S. is waiting for, I think. Okay?
You're
The
right.
U.S. wants us to fight China. You know.
Not until November.
Not until. You think it matters if Trump
No,
wins or
but
not?
I'm serious. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, that time, remember when we cut the floating barrier?
Yeah.
What did China do? Nothing. I knew it. I predicted it. China would do nothing because they lost face. Okay, just cut it. I said.
Pero ngayon ba hindi ba tayo masyadong dependent on them like for our economy or
No.
kapag if we start
Look,
something
as I
like
said
that?
earlier, China is Indonesia's top trading partner. Oh, you want to mess us with your cheap goods? Okay, 200% tariff. Good night. Okay, take it or leave it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They backed off. See.
But there's such a thing as the Walmart framework. For a while, Walmart was 95%
China.
China,
from
yeah.
China. Now they have diversified towards Vietnam.
India, yeah.
I've said-
Mexico,
and
Mexico.
I've said a long time. The Philippines should learn right now to pivot and join other supply chains because other supply chains are more efficient than China's and are cheaper now. Because China's labor now is expensive.
Expensive, yeah.
All right. So China is not what it used to be 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
This is a very different China now. Labor
Yes.
is very expensive in China now.
Yeah.
And the other countries can also do what China has been doing in the past. They can manufacture just as efficiently as China did before. Okay? So it's time to move out, to not be too dependent on trade with China, and to diversify our supply chain.
And the risk, you mean also in terms of making sure, because in our national grid, the Chinese have a lot of influence. Tulfo,
Because
Senator
remember,
Tulfo.
right now,
Yeah.
China is suffering. Their imports are down, their exports are down. All right, their real estate market is still in the doldrums.
Yeah.
All right, they have serious problems, economic problems. They have serious problems.
Also
Okay?
demographics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Serious demographic problems.
Shrinking population.
And they're dumping. There's only so much the world can absorb from their dumping of their products. So their overproduction is also a problem for China.
Including their EV, their electric cars, they have overproduction.
Everything is a problem.
Kaya ang mura ng Chinese cars eh. They're underpriced.
We should slap a tariff on Chinese cars coming to the Philippines. We should be bolder.
What about
can
Chinese
they-
tourists? What about Chinese tourists?
You know, as I said, charge them higher visa fees. You want to come in? Charge. Bang.
Ito, I have another question.
Play their game. You know what I mean? Play their game.
Play their game.
Play
Ito, how about
hardball.
very
Two
important
can,
ito.
two can tango.
SM will disagree.
Yeah. SM lang ba?
They're surrogates. As I said, they're
Yeah.
surrogates. They're surrogates.
Mark, you were saying.
As I said.
Ito,
Yeah.
how about how do we deal with China's election interference?
Yeah,
Kasi,
yung mga cheap
yun eh,
fake, deep fake, yeah.
Baka merong Chinese candidate, baka merong sa susunod na sa 2028.
Well, you
May
can-
Team China ba? David, may Team China ba sa 2019 elections?
I don't know about that, but what I'm saying is you read the way the Filipino surrogates talk and compare it to the way the Chinese propaganda goes. If there is a striking similarity, you know this guy's a surrogate of China.
Do you want to name drop?
As I said, China follows certain templates.
Yeah.
And their surrogates
Right.
are going to follow their templates. They're not going to divert.
Ronald, do you have any idea?
No comment.
Yeah, it's no comment. That's not saying nothing about the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea also make you a surrogate. You never, the people who never criticize China, are they suspect?
I am doing everything based on my responsibility to the Philippines.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what I'm doing. Again, I'm acting in terms of my conscience. Okay? It's as simple as that. I'm not becoming rich because of this, and I never will become rich because of this. And I'm glad I'm not going to become rich because of this. Okay? Because it makes me happy to be
Yeah.
able to help. To use that knowledge I acquired when I was living there, and now using it for the benefit of the Philippines. That's what makes me happy.
But David, I know people are also happy and they get the money from China.
Well, good luck. I mean, hey, if you're Catholic, if you've never heard of the choice between God and mammon,
Yeah, I know.
good luck.
Good
okay?
luck
You know
with
what I
that.
mean?
Wala atang Jesuit training yung mga iba dyan.
Good luck.
Good luck. Thank you so much, David. This is easily above 1 hour. We're thinking about 40, 45 minutes. This is like 63 minutes as we speak. I think this is just hopefully the beginning of a series of conversation.
Oh, I hope so.
I told you, David, this show is open, it's free, it's live, so people can hear you, your message. Maybe I and Ronald are suspecting you're a triple agent provoking a war with China, but it's okay. It's okay. We are open-minded people, open-minded. And just to be clear, the backdoor that Ronald was talking about was diplomatic backdoor, just in case we might get flagged in the wrong way. Thank you. So after this, we're going to have a live discussion on Philippine politics, everything crazy happening in the country. Yes, Alice, go. We're going to go back to her. Thank you so much, David. That was a fantastic discussion. I hope we can continue this kind of, I'm sure this will be more Bardugulan to come as election comes, because I think it's going to be Team Philippines versus Team China in the 2019 elections. And
We'd
is there...
like to exchange notes with David.
I know. David, just in case. David, baka naman. David, how can people get to know about your works? Are you going to open a vlog, or are you going to blog or something? How can people get to know more about it? Because I had a hard time finding a David Nye who's not like a Caucasian or something like that. You're very suspicious.
I'm a very private person.
Yeah, very suspicious. Like,
And I want to keep that mystery.
yeah,
Because I think that mystery is my edge.
your charm. Yeah.
Mystery Trojan horse.
Yeah. Well, why, Ronald is also mysterious, but but all over the place, including in competing podcasts. All right, thank you so much, David. Hope to have you soon. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was good. That was good. All right, good na tayo.
Well, there were a lot of comments.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
There were
We're good.
comments?
Yeah, we have 10,000 views right away. That's the immediate one.